Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Yeti from Earth to Plates, and in today's video I'm going to take you guys along with me as I do some Shabbos cooking. We will be making some challah and sourdough. The sourdough starter I fed already this morning, and we're going to get to making the dough later today. The challah, I got some water boiling. We're waiting for that to come up to temperature. And my goal today is to get the most done. Today's Thursday, so I want to get the most done today and leave the minimal amount for tomorrow so that I can have a stress-free Friday. So I want to do the sourdough, I want to do the challah today. I have some dips and salads to prepare. I want to make a fish. And yesterday I made some chicken soup in here, so we're going to start off by dividing that into containers. I made a big batch so I can have some in my freezer as well. And later tonight I want to make my cholent. And then tomorrow I'll just have to bake the sourdough, make a potato kugel, and fry up some chicken, because the kugel and the chicken I prefer making it on Friday. So let's get right into it by dividing up the soup. I have my chicken soup here. I prepared a pot right here, and in here I'm gonna put in whatever we're going to be using this week. And then I have a bunch of containers here. I don't think I'll be filling up all of this, but I'd rather have them all out and ready in case if I do need it. Now, what I do is I have some stuff in they're called wrap and boil bags, like this. I don't know if you can see it, but I like to remove those first. But whatever vegetables or anything that I don't want to put into the containers that we won't be eating, I like putting them into the bag so it's very easy to remove them. So the way that I cook my chicken soup is that I fill this up about 3/4 full with water, and I cover it, let it come to a boil. Once it has come up to a boil, I add some chicken bones in a bag, and then I add in some chicken nuggets loose in the soup. I used to put them in a bag, but what I found since I started just dropping them into the water is that they stay juicier. If when I put it in the bag, they were sort of like packed in there, and when we went to eat it, it wasn't very juicy. So nowadays I just leave it. I just let it float around in the soup. After the chicken, I add in some salt and some peppercorns, and I let that cook for a bunch of hours. And essentially that is just the chicken broth. So if you ever want to make homemade chicken broth, that's how you do it. And if you don't want to make a separate chicken broth, then once it has cooked for a bunch of hours, you can remove some of the liquid, use that as chicken broth, and then add in the vegetables that you like to do in your chicken soup. I add an onion, a parsnip, parsley, and dill in one of those bags. That's the previous bag that I took out. And then I add, just loose in the liquid, in the broth, I add in carrots, celery, and zucchini. The zucchini I like to leave with a peel on, because if you're gonna freeze it, then the peel helps it retain its structure, and it won't fall apart when you're reheating it. And once I add the vegetables, I just cook it an additional few hours, and then I just let it cool overnight, and in the morning I divide it up. And this is what we're doing today. So cooked all day yesterday, and the reason why I like to do the soups the day before I would cook is because when I have this pot on the flame, it is very hard to fit anything else onto the stovetop. So Yesterday I didn't cook anything, so it was perfect. And the dinner that I made was a baked dinner, so it was perfect opportunity to cook some chicken soup. And the celery that I put in here is actually some celery from the garden, and that gets me really excited. Anytime I can add anything from the garden, it makes me happy. Okay, so I still have a lot of vegetables in here, not a lot of broth, and I still have some chicken nuggets. The chicken nuggets I'm gonna get out, and this I like to eat for lunch. I am gonna make some pesto. I'm gonna shred up this chicken, and then I'll combine the pesto with the shredded chicken, and I love that for lunch. Okay, so I got 9 32-ounce containers of soup. Plus, I got in my pot, I would say the equivalent of probably 2.5 of these containers. And for these, I'm putting on labels, and these are actually labels that melt away when they get wet. For this, it doesn't really matter, but when I use my mason jars, I love them because they come off no problem. And so these can go into the freezer. And this one, I will cover up and put into the fridge, and we will reheat it tomorrow to get it hot again. Okay, now that we're done with the soup, I have here a side of salmon that I will be making for our fish. So I have the oven preheating to 500. I'm going to sprinkle some garlic salt on the top. Be generous with it. I'll add some salt as well. And some pepper. Now that we've got the spices on here, we can move this aside. And we're going to make the sauce. Now, usually I do this in a bowl. All my bowls are currently being used. So I'm going to do this in the jar, and I'm going to shake it to combine. So all we do for the sauce is equal parts of sesame oil and soy sauce. And this is convenient that I don't actually have to dirty up a measuring cup. Okay, we're going to let this rest on the counter now because we're still waiting for the oven to reach temperature. Once we're ready to put this into the oven, I'm going to pour about 3/4 of this sauce over top of the fish, and it'll go into the oven for a few minutes, and then we're going to add some peppers. So let me go get those peppers and get them ready to be added. Okay, so we have here one of each, a red, yellow, orange pepper and some jalapenos, and all we're going to do is cut them up into strips. So what I like to do is to cut off the top and the bottom first. And then I cut out the center. If you go from this side, you can see where the veins are. And it's pretty easy to just get your knife in there, cut down the entire length, and the entire thing comes out. And once I have all of them cut up like this, I'm going to wash them and then cut it into strips. And now for the jalapenos, I just cut off the top. Now that they're washed, I'm just going to cut them into strips. Okay, while I'm here cutting up peppers, I'm going to cut up some for jalapeno garlic confit. For that, I'll be using 3 jalapenos, and I have here 5 of these. I don't know what type of peppers they are. In my grocery is just listed as spicy red peppers. So I'll do the same thing. I'll just cut off the tops first, wash them, and then cut them up. And these I'll cut into rings. So I've got here the dish that I like to cook my jalapeno garlic confit in. And as I'm cutting up my vegetables, I'll put it straight into there. We have all the peppers cut up and in the bowl over here, not bowl, dish. And I'm just gonna add in some peeled garlic. I'll do all of it. Okay, that's it for the vegetables. Now I'm gonna start with the spices. We're gonna start with some cumin, smoked paprika, salt, and pepper. Okay, this is everything for the spices. Now you can play around with the spices. You can add any spices that you like, take off anything that you don't like. Just use spices that your family likes. Now we're going to top this with some avocado oil. And again, you can use any oil here. This is what I prefer. And I cover it about 3/4. And what I do is I will mix it a little bit, release some air pockets, and see if, once I'm done mixing it, if everything is submerged in the oil. If not, I will add more. Well, that was the perfect amount. Now the fish is going to come out of the oven now, and we're going to drop the oven temperature to 350. We're going to add the peppers with the fish, add the remaining dressing, and this will also go into the oven on 350, and they're both going to bake for 45 minutes. So they're going to go in at the same temperature and be in there for the same amount of time. So it's a perfect combo. So I like to try to get some sauce back onto the fish because over here the thickest part is usually the hardest. We're going to sprinkle some sesame seeds over top. If you want to make this fish with sliced salmon, then I would go ahead and do it on 500 for 5 minutes instead of 10 to 12, and then on 350 for like 15 to 20 minutes instead of the 45 minutes. And if you don't want to have to take it out of the oven, you can do it just on 400 for 18 minutes and it'll be just as good. When you're putting the fish back in the oven, remember that the pan is hot. It was just in a 500-degree oven. Okay, the next thing we will be doing is the sourdough. I will take you back to earlier today when I fed the starter. To feed my starter, I get my scale out and my container that I use, and I get that onto the scale, and I make sure that there is 0 grams representing that. I add equal amounts of water and flour. So because I know that my recipe needs 100 grams of starter per bread, and I'm making 2, I'm doing 100 grams of water, 100 grams of flour to get a total of 200 grams of starter that I will be able to use to be able to make the breads. And then I combine it until there are no more clumps of flour and they're all nice and evenly combined. I then cover it and put it in a warm spot in my kitchen. And now it's a few hours later. This has nicely doubled in size and we are ready to use it to make our bread. My scale turned off. I'm going to start off with some starter. Perfect. Wow. Next up, we're going to add some water. And I like to use bottled room temperature water. We're going to take this off the scale and dilute the starter into the water. Now that it's fully combined, we can put it back on the scale. And we're going to add in our flour. And the last thing for now is some whole wheat flour. Gonna get it off the scale again, and we're gonna combine this until it forms a shaggy dough. You want to make sure that all the flour is hydrated, and we're gonna wait half an hour to an hour before we add in the salt so that the flour can get really well and hydrated, in case if you didn't mix it completely. I will mix this together until I don't see any dry flour on the bottom of the bowl. That means that it has all been incorporated. Now that this is fully combined, I have a tea towel here, a kitchen towel. I'm going to cover it loosely and we're going to let this sit until we are ready to add the salt. Once we incorporate the salt, we're going to keep doing stretch and folds until this is ready to shape. So I have about a half an hour left until the fish is going to come out of the oven, the fish and the jalapeno garlic confit. So we're going to get going on some more salad/dips. So I'm going to make some tomato dip. And all I do is I cut up the tomato, I will cut out the core, cut off any bad spots. And I like to cut them into quarters so that it's a little bit easier for the machine to work it. Now I'm adding some garlic, and these are actually garlic cloves that I used for seed garlic, the leftovers. I am using fresh in the kitchen, and it is getting me very excited for our harvest in the summer. If you want to see how I planted them, I can link the video for you right now. I'm going to sprinkle in some salt, some black pepper. Now I'm going to cover this and I'm going to start blending. While it's blending, I will drizzle in some olive oil and then let it go until I like the color. And you'll see the change in color. Okay, now that this has nicely blended up, we're going to add it to the jar and this can go into the fridge. This can now go into the fridge. The next thing we'll be making is some hummus. So in here I've got a can of chickpeas and a can of cannellini beans that I have rinsed and drained. Now in here I'm going to add some garlic, some tahini paste. Next up we're going to add the juice. The recipe calls for 2 lemons. I just realized I only have 1. So we're going to do this plus some bottled lemon juice. Soy sauce. Some sea salt. Cumin. Cayenne pepper. And some white pepper. As this is mixing, I'm going to incorporate some olive oil and water into it to help with the consistency. And this is now ready to go in the fridge as well. And we're just about ready to add salt to the sourdough and get the fish and the jalapeno garlic out of the oven. Okay, so here we got the sourdough. I have it back on the scale. We're going to add in the salt. I like to use pink Himalayan salt for breads. And we're going to add some water to help dilute the salt. And now we're gonna incorporate the salt into the dough until you don't feel any more of the grainness of the salt. Okay, I combined this until I felt like all the salt was dissolved. We're going to cover this again and set it aside so we can do the stretch and folds. Now let me get my cooling rack out because the fish and jalapeno garlic are done. So this here is our jalapeno garlic. Look at the oil bubbling. Can you see it? I think you could. I think you can. Okay. And here we got our fish. Okay, it's still pretty early in the afternoon. It's only 12:40 right now. I have the sourdough, which we just added the salt. We're going to do stretch and folds throughout the day. And I want to make some challah, but I know that my family members would love to do it with me. We enjoy making it as a family, so I think I'll do that later in the afternoon. And then after that, the only thing left to make today is the cholent. Otherwise, it'll be baking the sourdough tomorrow and frying up some chicken and making some kugel. So I'll see you guys again when we are making the challah. Hey guys, so it's a few hours later and we are getting to make our challah dough right now. And I have a helper here. She is going to pour in the yeast that we have pre-measured. I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. And I have here all my ingredients pre-measured. Almost all of my ingredients pre-measured. And I'm just going to do this slowly. I'm going to let the yeast proof first. Then I will add in some flour to make it a thick paste. Then I'll add in the eggs, sugar, and oil. And then as it's mixing, I'll alternate some water and flour until the dough is fully incorporated. And I'll let it work itself in so it becomes a good dough. And then we'll let it rise. The salt will be added later on after I'm done adding the flour and the water and the dough is coming together. That's when I'll add the salt. Just like the sourdough, I'm going to put it in right away. Same thing with this. So I'm going to turn this on and then I'll slowly alternate the flour and the water. This dough is now ready. So I have my bowl here and I'm going to let it rise in. I greased it. I'll take the entire dough and put it in here and let it rise in that. What I like to do to help this rise is I use a clean garbage bag to help the sweat, and then a clean towel to keep it warm. I'm going to let this rest and we'll come back to shape it. So the dough has now nicely risen. You can take this off. And my helper here is going to start braiding. Well, I'm going to crack an egg for the egg wash and I'm going to spray the pans. So I took a piece of the dough. I'm going to divide it into 6. And then I take each of these 6 individual balls and I roll them out and try to get them to about the same length so that when I am braiding them, it is easier to work with. We're pinching it together at the top. We're going to pretend that they're numbered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? Start from the left-hand side, going to the right-hand side, okay? So what you're going to do is, you're going to lift up number 6. This one is stretching too thin. And number 1 will go under and up. And number 6 is going to come down to the center. Now, all we're going to do, to oversimplify it, I'm going to tell it to you like this. All we're going to do is from the side that has one up. You're going to take the one that's on the bottom, or under it on the to the outside, and that will go over and up, and the one that was up beforehand will come down to the center. So it will go like that to the center. So now that we have one up on this side, we're going to take this one that's on the side and bring this one down to the center. So this is what we're going to keep on doing. So you take number 6.
This is 1, this is 2, this is 3, 4, 5, 6.
Lift it up. Number 6 goes up, hold it up. 1 goes under here and up here, and bring the 6 down to the center. Okay, and now all you do is from the side that has one up, you take the first one that's to the outside, this one, and that one will go around and up from that side, and that one will go down to the center.
Now I go from this side.
Yeah, up. Yeah, and that one to the center. No, that's not center. Like that, yeah.
This one to the center. And
And when you get to the end, you pinch it closed. And you have a beautiful challah braid. No, it's not hard at all. I oversimplified it and it makes it very easy. Right? The beginning is complicated because like, 1 second, what am I doing? Okay, so number 6 is going up. Number 1 is going under and up, and number 6 is going down to the center. And one thing I forgot to say earlier is that when you bring the one that's up down, you're going to keep it to the side that it was before. Like this was number 1 before, so we're going to bring it back to this side. This is number 6, so we're going to bring it back to this side. And once I have all the dough braided, I will do an egg wash on all of them and put the sesame seeds on. And I don't do a second rise for it. All I do is I put it into the oven that is set to 175. I let it bake for a few minutes. That acts like the second rise. And then I raise the oven temperature to 350 and I let that bake until it is done. And this is our last bit of dough. So we're getting 6 challahs out of it. Now, before I clean up this floury mess, our sourdough is ready to be shaped. So, I'll go ahead and do that. Whoa! Next up, the last thing for this day is to make the cholent. So I take out the crock pot and I put some water straight into the pot before I put a liner in. And for this, I can't tell you how much because I usually just feel the depth of the water. I know like the depth that I want. So now I'm gonna dice an onion and I add that. I will add a cup of each kidney beans, navy beans, and barley. And for the spices, I add some salt, some black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, and with this you can be generous. And then I add a little bit of red pepper flakes, a little bit of cayenne pepper. Then I like to add umami because I don't saute the onion, so this adds an additional depth of flavor. Some date syrup or Cholent to help balance out the spice, add some sweetness to balance it, and some soy sauce. Next up, I add some diced potatoes. I use 2 potatoes for this amount of beans, and then I fill up the pot with water. For this amount, I did it almost till the top, like more than a 3/4 of the pot is full of water, and this was perfect. And now we can cover it. Hey guys, so it's the next morning, and we're going to start off with some potato kugel. So I already have 9 potatoes here peeled and rinsed. I usually do 10, but they're kind of big potatoes, so I figured 9 will do. And now before I get to shredding that, I have here a 9x13. I'm going to put some oil in here, and then we'll add this to our oven that I am preheating right now to 550 degrees. And the oil will heat up in there as the oven preheats. This over here will be used as our mixing bowl. And I'm gonna crack 6 eggs into this bowl. This is what I prefer to mix my kugel in because my biggest bowl is not big enough to comfortably stir the potatoes together with the eggs and the oil and spices. So I use this as a mixing bowl. What I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna whisk the eggs so that it is easier to combine it all together later on. Okay, can get rid of this, and this can go to the side until we're ready for it. Now we're going to start shredding. So I have here my C blade. This is what I like to use for my kugel. And what I'll do, I'll just alternate shredding the potatoes with the onions. So the onions going in between will help prevent the potatoes from browning. Okay, so we're going to start shredding the potatoes and onions, and I'm going to do it one at a time. And some of these potatoes might have to be cut down, but I'm going to do it on a one-on-one basis if it needs it. And that's it. Let's get going. Before I get going on the spices, I wanted to remove our oil from the oven because the oven has reached temperature and the oil is definitely hot. For the spices, all I'm going to do is add salt and pepper. I like to mix this with my hand. So I'll just get in here and mix it together, the eggs together with the potatoes. And once it's almost fully combined, and the potatoes are not so compressed, because like in the bowl, they get pressed down. So I loosen it up a little bit with my fingers. And now that it's almost fully combined, I'm going to pour the oil in and mix it fully. It's usually bubbles still. It's very hot, so I wait a second or two and then I start mixing it in. And it cools off rather quickly. That's it, it's not hot. Now that it's fully mixed together, we can pour it into our pan. And I'll flatten out the top. And this will go into the preheated oven for an hour. After an hour, I'm going to lower it to 350 for an additional 30 minutes. And then this will be done. Okay. This is something that I like to make earlier in the day because we like to enjoy this for lunch on Fridays. The next thing we'll be making is the chicken. So I'm going to start by cracking 2 eggs into one of the bowls here. Now I'm going to add my spices. I'm going to start with salt, black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, paprika, pepper flakes, and some soy sauce. Now I'm going to combine this. Now before I get my hands dirty and start breading the chicken, I'm going to add some cornflake crumbs into the second bowl. And I've got a plate here to put my breaded chicken into. Okay, now I'm going to start adding the chicken. I usually buy chicken tenders, but when I was in the store, I couldn't find any. So I bought chicken nuggets, but they're very big, so I'm going to cut them into smaller pieces in the size that we can enjoy it. And when I bread chicken, I like to keep one hand wet, one hand dry. It makes less of a mess like that. So I've already got my oil going, warming it up. And what I like to do is I put in a popcorn seed in the oil before I turn on the heat. And once that pops, I know that the oil is hot enough to start cooking the chicken. And that's when I'll start adding it and frying it. Okay, now that we've got all the chicken in, I'm gonna make sure it all gets coated in the egg mixture with all the spices. And we'll get to breading. So again, like I said, one hand wet, one hand dry. We'll keep on doing this until all the chicken is coated. Okay, now this popcorn seed didn't pop, but it did crack open. So we're gonna call this good. The oil is hot. And we can start dropping our chicken. Okay, so the Kugel is done. We took that out of the oven. I put in my 2 Dutch ovens in there and preheated it to be able to get the sourdough breads going. And with this, our Shabbos cooking will officially be done. I like to dust the tops with some flour. Then I score it, and I like to do a double score to help create the ears. And then I etch a little design into it as well. And now they are going into the preheated Dutch oven. So guys, it's almost time for me to light the Shabbos candle. So that means that all the cooking is done. I'm ready. The soup over here is warming up. We got our Kugel here. I got the chicken here. They come out really good. So I just wanted to thank you guys for coming along with me today and yesterday, cooking with me, being in the kitchen with me, spending time in the kitchen with me. It really means a lot to me when you guys watch it till here. So thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting the like button. And if you've enjoyed watching this video and you want to see many more, which I'm already working on a lot more videos. So hit the subscribe button so you can be updated whenever I post a new video. And if you want to watch some more videos between now and my next upload, I will pop some on the screen for you right now. I'll see you guys next time.